This is why narcissists always lose after trying to destroy you. Healthy, grounded people move through life with the steady force of their own effort. They build their successes brick by brick, fueled by personal accountability, reflection, and the willingness to grow. Narcissists, however, do the opposite. They grip the wheel of their own destruction and press the accelerator with both feet. Even when they fully recognize that their choices are steering them toward chaos, loneliness, and loss, they continue sabotaging themselves as though self-destruction were a mission they are too proud to abandon. Psychologists often describe this as a chronic inability to change course because acknowledging wrongdoing requires humility, and humility is kryptonite to the narcissistic ego. Meanwhile, emotionally healthy individuals put their energy into learning, healing, and bettering themselves, which is why they continue evolving while the narcissist remains stuck. This difference in direction is one of the most ironic tragedies of narcissistic abuse. While the narcissist is investing every ounce of emotional energy into tearing down the person they perceive as competition, the survivor is slowly transforming. Instead of collapsing under the pressure, the survivor adapts. They move forward. They grow wiser. They learn to rely on themselves. The very hostility that was intended to break them becomes the heat that hardens them like steel. Without meaning to, the narcissist ends up generating independence, clarity, and resilience in the person they once controlled, qualities that ultimately render them irrelevant. Survivors gain emotional intelligence because they must constantly evaluate danger, adjust boundaries, and think strategically just to stay sane. Narcissists, on the other hand, remain in a perpetual loop. They repeat the same tactics with new partners, new friends, and new targets, convinced each time that the outcome will somehow be different. But it never is. Their life becomes a carousel of replayed arguments, failed relationships, and lost opportunities, while they were monitoring your every move. Waiting for you to falter, you were doing something they will never comprehend: evolving. You took the flames they used to scorch you, shaped them into fuel, and walked away as a stronger, wiser, more self-aware version of yourself. Months, or sometimes years, afterward, the narcissist looks up from their wreckage and realizes with a shock that they are standing in the exact same place they were when the abuse began. Meanwhile, you have disappeared over the horizon. That is the brutal irony of their obsession. They did not just lose you. They lost the race they never knew they were running because they insisted on staring backward instead of moving forward. Their fixation on destroying you became the very thing that destroyed them. And that brings us to the first reason narcissists fall behind the very people they try to ruin. Reason number one is simple. They are running a race with their head twisted over their shoulder, eyes locked on you instead of the finish line. Imagine trying to sprint forward while constantly looking backward. It is not only clumsy, it is impossible to win. This is how narcissists live every day. Their focus is outward rather than inward. Their energy is spent scrutinizing, measuring, stalking, and comparing themselves to their target. Even long after a relationship ends, long after you blocked them, stopped speaking, or disappeared from their life, they continue tracking you through envy and fixation. They scroll through your social media at 3 a.m. They interrogate mutual acquaintances about where you are living, how you are doing, whether you are dating again. Every step they take is driven by competition rather than desire. Psychologists describe this as reactive motivation. They act only in response to what you do, never from a place of personal purpose. If you advance in your career, they chase a title they do not want just to feel superior. If you buy a car, they rush out to finance a more expensive one they cannot maintain. If you find a healthy, loving relationship, they scramble to find someone they can flaunt, not because they care, but because they need to prove something. In truth, they are not living their own life at all. They are living a shadow version of yours, reacting instead of creating, mirroring instead of growing. And because every ounce of energy is spent trying to keep up with the person they once belittled, there is nothing left to invest in their own goals. They stagnate, unable to develop, unable to evolve, unable to find peace. Meanwhile, you, no longer burdened by their weight, focus on your lane. You invest in your healing. You build new friendships, pursue long-forgotten dreams, discover who you are without manipulation clouding your vision. By the time the narcissist finally realizes they have crashed into a dead end, you are miles ahead, living a life so full, so different, and so far beyond their reach that they cannot even recognize the terrain anymore. Reason number 2 is one that hits with a quiet tragedy. They waste their most valuable years waging war instead of growing. Time is the only currency that cannot be refunded, replaced, or negotiated. Even the most manipulative narcissist has no power over the clock, and yet they throw their hours away as though the supply will never run out. Imagine the sheer manpower required to maintain a smear campaign. It is not just a single accusation whispered into one ear. It is thousands of small, calculated actions over months and years. It takes energy to track your every move, to triangulate friends and relatives against you, to fabricate stories convincing enough to pass as truth, and to monitor all the lies so the threads do not unravel. While you were fighting to regain your sanity, they were conducting a full-time operation of character assassination. Psychologists often note that narcissists put more effort into destruction than creation because attacking others preserves their illusion of superiority without requiring real growth. Those hours they spent plotting against you could have been used to learn a new trade, pursue a degree, or simply evolve into a wiser human being. But growth demands accountability, and accountability demands self-reflection, the one mirror a narcissist refuses to look into. So instead of maturing, they become master architects of ruin, pouring their youth into building a fortress of hate. Meanwhile, in the darkest chapters of your life, you were quietly rebuilding yourself brick by brick, learning to breathe again, to trust again, to see clearly. You used the pain they inflicted as raw material for transformation. They spent those same years tossing gasoline, not realizing fire consumes the one who feeds it most. You emerge from the ashes with a new identity, stronger, wiser, and more grounded. They emerge with nothing but smoke. When the narcissist finally pauses long enough to survey the life they've created, what they find is devastating. They sacrifice decades they can never reclaim. And for what? Not a legacy, not a skill, not a dream realized. They built a towering monument dedicated to your demise, only to discover in the end that they are the solitary prisoner living inside it. And you walked free and kept walking until the structure disappeared behind you. Reason number 3 reveals the engine that keeps this tragic pattern spinning. They have no internal source of fuel and eventually run dry. Narcissists function like emotional parasites, siphoning energy from the people closest to them. Unlike emotionally healthy adults who cultivate joy from purpose, connection, and inner motivation, a narcissist produces none of their own. When they were enmeshed in your life, they appeared competent, charming, and vibrant because they were plugged into you. They borrowed your emotional intelligence, wore your reputation like a mask, and used your kindness, creativity, and resilience as a power source. Psychologists often describe them as the moon reflecting the light of another sun. To the outside world, it looked as though they were glowing, but that glow was never theirs to begin with. The moment you broke free, or the moment they foolishly discarded you, they yanked their own power cord out of the socket. They believed they could easily attach themselves to someone new, but as time passes, that becomes increasingly difficult. New sources of supply learn the pattern faster. The narcissist's reputation begins to leak. Their stories no longer hold up. Their charm weakens with age, and the truth becomes harder to hide. Without a willing host, they start coasting on fumes, and a life built on manipulation eventually sputters to a halt. The narcissist, who once strutted and boasted and performed, becomes a stalled engine, an expensive car with no gas, abandoned on the side of life's highway watching others speed toward success. Meanwhile, without the daily burden of holding them together, your energy begins to return in waves. You discover how capable you were all along. You find time you never had, clarity you forgot you possessed, an ambition that had been quietly waiting beneath the weight of their demands. You accelerate because you are finally fueling only yourself. Your forward motion becomes effortless compared to the grinding exhaustion of dragging a narcissist behind you. And as you surge ahead, you leave them exactly where they always feared they would end up: stuck, stagnant, and forgotten, while you live the life they never believed you were strong enough to build. Reason number 4 is one of the most tragic yet predictable outcomes of a narcissist's life. They torch every single bridge they eventually need to cross. In the real world, success is not a solo mission. Whether in career, community, or personal life, the people who truly advance are those who build relationships on trust, consistency, and respect. Every step upward is supported, directly or indirectly, by others who believe in you. But the narcissist doesn't understand this. They operate as if they are immune to consequences, and everywhere they go becomes a personal battleground. In their obsessive mission to sabotage you, they expose the darkest parts of themselves. They lie to coworkers to gain sympathy, manipulate supervisors into favoring them, and betray family members and friends to harvest validation or stir chaos that makes them feel powerful. In the moment, they feel victorious, as though their deception is proof of brilliance. Yet psychologists note that narcissists almost always overlook the long-term cost of their schemes, because their thinking is trapped in immediate gratification and emotional impulse. Over time, the cracks become obvious. Masks that once slipped only occasionally begin to fall off daily. Bosses who once admired them become suspicious of their endless conflicts. Friends start comparing notes. Family members grow tired of excuses. Eventually, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore, and everyone sees the truth. The one thing every disaster, feud, fallout, and emotional implosion has in common is them. Then life delivers a moment all adults eventually face. The narcissist suddenly needs help, a character reference, a contact to open a door, a job lead, or simply someone to vouch for them. But when they turn around to ask, the room is empty. There is no one left to call. Every ally was pushed away. Every bridge was set aflame long before they realized they might need to walk across it someday. While you were quietly building new, healthy relationships rooted in honesty and mutual respect, their world was collapsing into isolation. Their social circle shrinks, their options evaporate, and the very people they once looked down on begin to bypass them entirely. You move forward with an expanding community. They stay behind, trapped in a shrinking universe built from their own wreckage. Reason number 5 reveals the heart of why narcissists never outrun the people they tried to destroy. They remain stuck in their original wound while you transform yours into strength. Narcissists live in a perpetual state of grievance. Internally, they are frozen at an emotional age where shame, envy, and entitlement rule their decisions. Their worldview is shaped by a single belief: everyone has wronged them. This mental frame turns every slight, real or imagined, into a lifelong vendetta. Psychologists explain that because a narcissist cannot tolerate admitting fault, they cannot learn from pain. Pain is either someone else's fault or something to be denied entirely. And without reflection, there is no healing. Without healing, there is no evolution. If you were to speak with them 10 years from now, you discover they're still rehearsing the same monologues, revisiting the same grudges, and telling the same distorted stories about who ruined their lives. While the rest of the world changes, they remain psychologically trapped, reliving the same emotional year over and over again. You, on the other hand, had a completely different path laid before you. The injury that shattered you became the catalyst for a transformation. You faced the darkness they handed you, and instead of staying there, you climbed out. You sought help. You read books, found therapists, talked to friends, prayed, wrote, cried, rebuilt, and slowly stitched yourself back together. Every painful insight became a stepping stone. What you experienced is something psychologists call post-traumatic growth. The process of emerging from trauma not only intact, but wiser, sharper, more self-aware, and more compassionate than before. You didn't return to the version of yourself that existed before the narcissist entered your life. You evolved into someone far more grounded, discerning, and powerful. Meanwhile, the narcissist remains locked in a war that ended long ago. They keep swinging at ghosts long after you've put your armor down and walked away. Their life becomes a shrine to the past, while yours becomes a blueprint for the future. This is why, when they look at you now, even from afar, they don't see a victim. They see living proof of their own failure. You embody everything they could not destroy. You stepped out of the rubble while they continue to live beneath it. And that realization, perhaps more than anything, is the harshest punishment life delivers to them. The ultimate revenge is not a counterattack or a public takedown. It is simply the act of thriving, of becoming someone whose existence exposes their stagnation. Narcissists spend their whole lives reacting to others, chasing shadows, and blowing out candles in hopes their flame looks brighter. But you are no longer in that room with them. You are building, creating, and expanding. You are fueled by purpose instead of fear, progress instead of nostalgia. Let them stare backward into the fading trail of what was. Let them stay mired in problems they refuse to solve. Your only responsibility now is to face forward, to keep moving toward the life they swore you'd never have. The race has ended long ago, not because you beat them, but because you stepped off the track and chose a better road. And with that realization, we can close this chapter. What matters most is not where the narcissist stands, but where you are going next. Thank you so much for listening. I genuinely appreciate you being here, giving your time, your attention, and your heart to this conversation. I will speak with you again in the next one, and I hope you meet me there a little stronger, a little clearer, and a little more grounded in who you truly are. Until then, as always, allow the healing to take its rightful place in your life and let it unfold gently, step by step, in whatever way feels true and safe for you. Remember, you do not have to force it, race it, or perfect it. Simply invite it in and trust that your heart already knows the way forward.